Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those joining us live, please feel free to ask questions in the comment section. I will be checking it from time to time. I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest, Laurie Boucher, attorney turned pasta aficionado. Laurie's passion is pasta, and she teaches all forms of pasta making privately and in local businesses in and around the Baltimore, Ocean City, and Delaware coastline. Laurie teaches some of her unique pasta classes as an adjunct professor at Anne Arundel Community College and is also a staff pasta instructor at the Baltimore Chef Shop, the Kitchen Studio Cooking School, and Little Italy's Pandola Learning Center. Some of Laurie's recent pasta classes have been held at Mobtown Brewing Company, Our House, the Synergy Cafe, and the Bayside Institute. Let's welcome Laurie.
Hi.
Hi, Laurie. What's on your plate today?
Oh gosh, well, this interview, thank you for having me. It's so nice to see you. It's been a while.
It has. And you've been busy. You're just back from vacation. You told me you were gone for 2 weeks and you only
Yes.
fixed one pasta dish. That might have been a first for the past 5 years. Have you ever gone that long before without making a pasta dish?
Not in the last 5 years. I was visiting my twin sister, and her husband are both fabulous cooks. So I sort of feel like when someone wants to cook something, I can learn something. My sister makes a fabulous carbonara, so I just kind of watch and take notes. I think you're always ready to learn something, no matter what. So it was really enjoyable also to have people cook for me.
Right. So, twin sister, family growing up, were you in a household where food played a big part and that, both of you to come out with a passion for cooking?
We did grow up in a house where food was important. One of four children. My mom's an excellent cook. Growing up, we weren't exposed too much to cooking because that was really her domain. But I would say out of the four of us kids, my twin sister and myself were probably the most passionate cooks. So,
I see your sister signing in here right now in
oh,
the
hey,
comment
Val.
section. um, Pasta. You law practice
Yes,
for a number of years, 29, 30 years,
yes,
then pasta. Why
right.
pasta? Tell me about that path.
Okay, so I'll try to make it short, but basically practiced law for about 29 years. And about 5 years ago, as my two kids started getting a little bit older and family dynamics were changing, I just sort of needed a change. Most of my practice the last 5 years was in mediation and family law. So I was getting a little burnt out. And I always thought about going to culinary school, but I never really thought I could actually fit it in because I felt like I had so many balls in the air as it was. So I decided to take one class, and it just hooked me. So I decided to do the degree program, ended up at Anne Arundel Community College, and earned my culinary degree there last December. And I'm currently trying to finish my baking and pastry degree. So I relate to you when you say you're a frustrated baker. I feel like that because baking is a completely different animal. I didn't grow up with a sweet tooth. I didn't grow up baking. My sister Val loves to bake. My daughter loves to bake. I was more of a open up the box and pray for the best. So it was really challenging, but something about the chemistry, the science, something just clicked. So I'm enjoying it, but I have to say it is a challenge. I have two more classes to take, but they're really fun. I have great instructors. It's a great program, and I've just learned a lot. So it's been great.
Yeah, it's highly rated. That's Anne Arundel Community College.
Yeah.
And when students can't afford the Culinary Institute of America, which is a small fortune, or some of the other schools, this for the locals in this area offers a fabulous program, and I think
Mhm.
um, Randy Stahl is one of the instructors.
Yes.
I
Uh-huh.
remember. And Randy used to be the chef at the Brass Elephant way in the
Yes.
very beginning. Very, very talented chef from New York.
And I think Chef Johnson worked with him back in those days because I remember talking with them because I do remember the Brass Elephant. And yeah, he's had quite a career. I mean, every professor there, and I'm not just saying this, they have such an incredible background in so many different places in the field, and they just really are so passionate and make it so much fun. So it's been really a great move for me. And also, the everything in life goes away when I'm in a kitchen. So for me, it was also a great distraction. So
I hear when you're making pasta, you like to play music. What
I
what's your
do.
what's your favorite type of tunes? Is it jazz? Is it what do you listen to the most?
I listen to typical Italian dinner music. I love Frank Sinatra. I like Glenn Miller. Those are things my father used to sing and enjoy growing up. Louis Prima. So I usually have a lot of that on. So I
Okay,
enjoy
okay.
it.
I
Yeah.
want to remind people before I forget, and it's going to come up in the comments, to reach Laurie. You can find her on Instagram at Baltimore Home Cook. And
Mhm.
there's a link at Baltimore Home Cook. It's called a link tree. And it go down, click on that. You'll see all her classes that are coming up. Everything that she's doing is right there. And that will come up in our comment section. And Laurie has an Etsy page. And let's hit that right now. Let's talk about the Sardinian tools that you brought in.
Okay. So the Etsy page that I started, it's called Pasta Art. And it really came out of a challenge that I had several years ago when I was really getting into pasta making. I'm really fascinated with Southern style pasta, which is a flour and water based pasta. And I kept seeing these very unique cutters on Instagram, but whenever I tried to get information about where to source them, I could not find any information at all. So I kind of went into my deep dive thing, which people that know me know I do that. I actually hired an engineer at what was the foundry downtown. Could not come up with any way to locate this. So I decided to do a deep dive into the internet. Fast forward, I found someone who agreed to work with me. We did all this by Google Translate. I don't speak a word of Italian other than food terms. This gentleman spoke no English at all. And I still remember when I put my first order in and I told my husband I was wiring a pretty substantial amount of cash for someone I've never even spoken to, not to mention nothing was in writing. And as an attorney, that's like a big no no. And I said, I have this feeling. These will sell. People want them. No one can find them. If I can't find them, I doubt anyone can. And so that sort of turned into the shipment came, and I sell them all over the world. I've sold, I think, over 400 or 500. I can't keep them in stock. And people love that they're accessible because it's really hard to find them. Not everyone can go to Sardinia and find a farmer's market and find one of these tools. So I was really pleased to do that.
Let's talk about, you're saying Sardinia, that pastas from the north are different than the pastas from the middle of Italy, from Sardinia, from
Yeah.
Sicily, down to Neapolitan pastas. There's so many flours. I know that
Hmm.
when I did the cookbook Yum, Ricardo Bossio from Soda Sopra gave me a recipe, and it was buckwheat flour,
Hmm.
and it's from northern Italy. I struggled with that. That was difficult, but people don't realize that you can really make a simple pasta with all-purpose flour and water, or all-purpose flour and an egg. You don't have to have
Hmm.
fancy, but there are many flours. Which do you like to work with for what application?
So generally speaking, the northern style pastas are more of a soft wheat flour. And then they use the egg for the protein to build up the gluten. The flours in the north use the durum wheat, which is a semolina, which is a lot stronger, so you can use water to it. Me personally, I love using semolina flour for pasta making. That being said, you mentioned buckwheat flour. There's certain flours you can't use exclusively because they won't come together into a pasta dough. So frequently I will maybe add a 25% of semolina to a soft wheat flour if I want a sturdier dough, if I'm making sort of a crazy, unique filled shape and I just need a little more strength to that dough. So yeah, flour is one of those things that you can go crazy talking about. There's so many different kinds, and luckily we have some My Grash Farms. I would buy flour from. They're local in Baltimore County, and it's just fun to try different flours to get different tastes, different textures. It's a great experiment all in its own. But yes, all-purpose flour is absolutely fine. So when we teach classes, and I did want to mention this, I was teaching for quite a while on my own and with a friend early on, but last year I just crossed paths with someone who I'm now working with, Frank Gardito. I don't know if Frank you're watching, but he is the best pasta partner. We have been working together since last August. And when we go into classes, we really do try to teach people that you don't need fancy ingredients. You don't need fancy tools. In fact, I don't bring any of my fancy stuff to classes because I don't want people to feel like they need to have, expensive things that, I may buy a really beautiful textured board from Japan, but I'm not going to teach someone and say they need to use that to make something beautiful. So we try to make it accessible for everyone. So all-purpose flour works great. As long as it's room temperature, not old, you're in good shape.
I remember at one point, years ago, I took a cooking class, and I think it was Jermaine Sharrett's or Jane Aaron. I can't remember who was teaching at the Church of the Redeemer, and we were doing pasta.
Oh, uh-huh.
And that's why I like a class. When you do hands-on, you're able to find texture.
Correct.
And one of the things she says, the texture you're looking for, and I'm going to sit here and go with the earphone, is rub your earlobe, and that's the texture. And feel that you want to that pasta. And that's, it's sort of shiny, it's a little supple. So that was a little tool. We met because you have your Instagram site, which was Baltimore Home Cook. And I start watching all these beautiful pastas that you were doing.
Oh, thank
then
you.
We met for lunch, and Kathy, who was Minx Eats, you and I came over and we did dinner. Didn't serve pasta at all. I wouldn't dare do that.
You could have, and it would have been delicious.
Well, I think we did okay. But let's talk about social media and how it's helped you. The challenges at my age group, I'm sort of thrilled with myself that I can do reels. But you must have been ecstatic. You did a reel on doppio, which is a double filling ravioli. It had close to 200,000 views.
Oh, no, see, I didn't even know that. I don't really watch those statistics, but I'm going to go back and look after this show.
169,000 views. And it was a very interesting pasta. The doppio means that there's two fillings in the pasta.
Yes.
So let's see. I have a bunch of questions here. Talked about the link tree. Okay. You had to be thrilled after going to Anne Arundel Community College and then becoming an adjunct professor there.
That was exciting. Yep. So just touching back on social media, I really started my Instagram account when I started culinary school. Really is just a way to sort of chronicle my progress through school. So most of my earliest posts are really all about the classes that I took. However, the first post I ever did was on garganelli, which is a pasta shape. It's a hand-rolled pasta shape or extruded. And I remember getting a lot of people very interested in that. So I think that was when the seed was in my brain that people were sort of interested in pasta. So yes, when I was in the culinary program several years ago, someone had approached me about teaching. And at that time, they didn't hire students. So, which was fine with me. And then at some point, there was some administration change, and I was asked if I would consider teaching a continuing education class. So, of course, I said yes. And it's never run because it was right near COVID. So every time it's been scheduled, it's been canceled. So I have one coming up in November. So I'm hoping that this will be, the one that runs there. But Frank and I, the pasta partner that I was talking about, we've done a lot of demos for the Culinary Club, some open houses at the school. So there's plenty of opportunities for pasta. And like I said, the professors there are very encouraging and open to sort of pushing us in our chosen passion. And so they certainly do that for Frank and I, which I'm very grateful for.
Is that where you met him, at Anne Arundel Community College?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. So this was about 3 years ago. There was a culinary team Arundel, and it was right before COVID. And I was assisting someone who was on the team who was doing a pasta dish. So he just sort of wanted a pasta mentor. So Fridays were the days that the team would get together in the culinary kitchen. And I went in one day, and someone said, "Hey, Laurie, do you know Frank?" And I said, "Frank who?" They said, "He's the guy that's down at the other end. He's kind of your age and he's Italian." And I, I must know him because he's Italian and he's sort of my age. I sort of chuckled, but I went down, I introduced myself, and we had maybe a 5-minute chat. He was making this cauliflower gnocchi. So fast forward to Bayside, last August, I had reached out to them. I saw that they were doing some culinary classes. This is in Fenwick in Delaware. And I saw that there was a chef that was teaching Cook Like an Italian classes, and it was Frank, but I didn't remember him at the time. So we set up a Zoom meeting. And for about 10 minutes, I knew I recognized him and I couldn't figure it out. And then right in the middle of our conversation, I said, "You're Frank, you go to Anne Arundel and I met you over cauliflower gnocchi." And we just started laughing and it just completely hit it off. And that's actually when we talked about sort of combining our interests, me with pasta, him with sort of Italian cooking and sauces. And that's when we started working together. So I never met him in the program. I don't know why we never crossed paths in any of the culinary classes, but we never did. So, but that's how that came about.
So people that are going down to Ocean City should definitely check the Instagram Baltimore Home Cook and go to the link and list the classes that you're giving in Ocean City. So it might not be the perfect rain date, or maybe you want the father to take the kids, you want some time to yourself. Check out the classes.
Yeah, right now we're doing some formal classes at Synergy Cafe, but I will say most of this summer, starting in about 10 days, we have a lot of private classes. So we don't list those, obviously. We just message me if you're interested, if you know you're going to the beach. And I can't even tell you how many private classes we're doing this summer, which we're both really excited about, but we're just going to people's homes or going to a small business if they're team building. So it'll be a busy summer, but filled with something we love doing. So we're both pretty happy about that. Yeah.
Is there a non-flour pasta that you like? There's so many gluten-free pastas out on the market. Have you found one that you feel is the closest to, but doesn't have the gluten?
Right. Not really. I mean, a surprising thing about me is I have a little bit of a gluten sensitivity. So when I tell people that, they can't believe it. I think they think that I eat all this pasta that I make, where truthfully about 90% of it I give away to friends or neighbors. I have made a gluten-free pasta before with a chickpea flour, which does come together with some patience. I didn't really like the taste of it. You really have to like chickpeas, and it was a little chalky. So for me, I don't really like the gluten-free pastas, but I probably do eat enough pasta that I could tell the difference. But I do think that there are some brands that people swear by. And I think if you season it and cover it with enough sauce or something else, you probably don't even notice it. But I prefer wheat flour pasta.
There's so many pasta shapes. Are all of them traditional, or do you go rogue?
I do both. So when I first started posting a lot of pasta, I really have a respect of the tradition. I love to learn. I've always been a learner my whole life. I have this great book. It's called the Encyclopedia of Pasta, and it gives you a lot of great information about every region, the shapes that are traditional. They don't really give recipes, but it's enough information that you can sort of try to replicate it. But that being said, I also really like the creative part of pasta making. So for me, it's just working the other side of my brain. So I will frequently do naturally colored pastas. I was teaching a class at the Baltimore Chef Shop on pasta. I call it pasta textiles, where, we would make different doughs with different natural ingredients or superfoods and create sort of almost like a fabric. And then with that fabric would make pasta shapes. So in the beginning, I would get a little pushback from some of the, I don't want to say the Italian people, but people that were very, very traditional. They would put things in comments like, this is not traditional. No one would ever color their pasta dough with, parsley. And so that was sort of with the shapes. And then, of course, I do experiment with doing a lot of my own shapes that I come up with. I do like to experiment with different like Asian dumpling folding techniques. So there's a lot of crossover with that because I think it's really interesting. And, when it comes down to it, it's just food. So I respect the tradition, but I really find this is almost like an art for me. So, and it's also therapy. So I'm always trying to do something different, push the envelope. So
You
I,
challenge yourself. Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Um, Pasta machines versus extruders.
Okay.
So I had an atlas that you clipped to the counter
Hmm.
and you rolled it out. And I've made homemade pastas, and I went, okay, I've done it. And I actually had friends who wanted to learn. So I had them come
Hmm.
over and we all made pasta and they got to feel it. They rolled it out. They each came with their own sauce and we sat down and ate it afterwards.
Oh, fun.
But extruders, I think you had mentioned your KitchenAid extruder.
Hmm.
And in Italy, some of these die cuts have a groove on the outside of the pasta,
Yes.
supposedly to hold the sauce. Is there a name for
Yes.
that, or?
Well, those are usually bronze dies. So I started off with, so I also have one of the Marcatos tabletop. I think I've had it for about 30 years. And of course, I have about 6 of those that Frank and I bring to pasta classes if we're doing a Northern style dough. I also have the KitchenAid attachment, which I like, but the dies are plastic. So I invested a few years ago in an Arcobaleno pasta maker, which is the home model. They are one of the largest pasta machine manufacturers in the country, but they do have a home model, which I think is fabulous. And they come with the brass dies. Bronze dies are a little bit different, but they do extrude the pasta with a texture on it, which is better for the sauce to cling to. So the KitchenAid with those plastic dies, the pasta will come out completely smooth. So I don't think I've used that attachment for quite some time because the Arco Baleno is just so much more efficient and the results are so much better. So that's what I pretty much use exclusively when I extrude pasta. And that's kind of a fun thing too. I think people don't understand that, it's just a different type of pasta. I think that even boxed pasta has a place in every kitchen. But I do find it really fun to extrude pasta shapes too. It's all of it's so much fun to me.
So my Seinfeld moment is, did you hear about this past maybe 4 months ago that the bucatini, there was a scarcity of bucatini?
Yes.
I have. Did you ever find out why? I mean, I found it, and not that I fix it that often, but I went, well, I'll get the 4 boxes and I'll have it. But you have an extruder, so you could make it anytime you want. You probably could have made a mint selling off bucatini.
Uh, well, I do have the bucatini die attachment. I probably have about 15 or 20 of different dies for all the different shapes. But there's also what I discovered was that if you go to a Greek market, I forget what number it is, maybe the 4 or the 7 pasta there is the one that they use to make, oh, it's escaping me, but it's got the hole in the middle, but it's a Greek pasta shape. It's the same thing. It's like bucatini. It's a long noodle with the narrow hole.
Hole in the center. So for people who don't know what bucatini is, um, it looks like a spaghetti. It's a little thicker, and there's a hole through it. And you usually do a heavier sauce with that, as opposed to a light sauce. What am I trying to think of? Oh well, it'll come to me when we go off air. Let's see.
Well, I'll make you bucatini anytime you want. You just tell me.
Okay, it's a deal. It's a deal. And we talk about hand cranks. I think one of the fun moments was I was food styling for Giuliano Bugial. He was in town, and he loved to do. He had a hand crank, and he would sit there and run the pasta and have somebody carry it all the way across the studio. May he rest in peace. But he was very specific about his Italian food. Very, very, it was a challenging time. And when I would get a not okay, I felt really, really good. Let's see, we've covered this. Homemade pasta. Best way to keep it fresh, best way to keep it frozen. What tools would you recommend, or how to? The pastas come out of the extruder, needs to dry. What do you do with it? And how do you prep it for freezing?
Right. So drying pasta is again one of those things. It depends on whether it's a northern style egg-based dough, if it's a filled shape, if it's a southern hand-formed shape, which uses the semolina flour. So in a nutshell, when it comes to southern hand-formed pasta, which is just semolina flour and water, what I typically do is as soon as I hand form it, I will flash freeze it. And that just maintains the integrity and the freshness of the pasta. I do know that some people claim, there's no egg in it. You can let it sit out. It will dry and be perfectly fine. It's not going to get moldy or anything like that. I find that you lose all the benefits of fresh pasta. It will become like a rock. In fact, I tell people this, they don't believe me, but I have bowlfuls of dried hand-formed semolina pasta as home decor. I would never think to cook it. It would probably take 40 minutes to cook and it wouldn't taste good. If I'm making an extruded egg-based pasta shape, if it's a larger shape like a filled ravioli, then typically I will blanch those for about a minute. And then I will dry them completely, and then I will flash freeze them and bag them. The reason I don't make them and freeze them right away is that you will find a lot of the cracking on the dough. So blanching it sort of avoids having that cracking happen. Do you need to do that? No, you could totally stick your fresh ravioli in the freezer and stick it in a bag. These are just little tiny details. If I'm keeping something in the fridge, if it's a filled shape, I will not cover it because I don't want the condensation to then come down onto the filled pasta and get it sort of wet. But anything that's not filled, I will cover and keep in the fridge maybe for a day. I don't really keep anything more than a day because if I'm making it, it's a plan and I'm eating it or giving it away. So that's sort of the storage. And if anyone has any questions on anything I'm saying today, they can certainly reach out to me via Instagram and I answer all questions. It's sort of there's so many different caveats to storing pasta. I typically never just leave it out overnight to dry. I know plenty of people do, but it's so hard to avoid the cracking of the pasta. So, most people don't have a method to slow dry their pasta, which is what they do with the boxed pasta, which is semolina and water. I find if I'm going to keep it out for a few hours, what I will do is lay the fresh extruded pasta on a flour towel, cover it with another one. And honestly, in 4 to 5 hours, you can feel the moisture on those towels that comes through. And then at that point, I will freeze it. So there is some moisture, but you don't want to get rid of all of it because then, it's going to crack and break and you'll be really sad.
Why are egg pastas more difficult than others? I've read that somewhere.
I think with an egg-based pasta, what I find the most challenging is that, you can't really just follow a recipe slavishly because all eggs are different sizes. So I did this in culinary school as one of my projects. I can take a container, 1 dozen eggs, weigh them all. They are going to all be completely. So the hydration level in your pasta is going to be different. So if I give you a recipe of 2 cups of flour and 3 eggs, and I've got 10 people doing it at the same time, all their doughs are going to be different. Also, I think just generally speaking with pasta, so many different things can affect your final dough, from the temperature, from the humidity level, the heat of
Right.
your hands, just so many things. But with an egg-based pasta, I would say you definitely want to make sure all your ingredients are room temperature. I typically weigh my eggs because I find that that's more precise. So for an egg paste dough, I go for a 57% hydration, and that's compare the egg weight versus the flour content. If I use just a couple of eggs and 2 cups of flour and I'm not weighing anything, more than likely I'm going to need a little bit of extra flour if the dough is sticky, or adding, a little bit of hydration if it's too dry. So I think that's the hard part about an egg-based pasta. Most people will probably not, most home cooks are not going to weigh their ingredients. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but you also have to understand that if it is dry, all you need to do is get your hands wet, keep kneading your dough. So many times they tell us in classes, I made this dough, it was so crumbly, I threw it out, and thinking, oh my goodness. So I think if you know just not to follow a recipe, especially with an egg-based dough, and understanding, like you were saying, the feel of the dough, what it's supposed to feel like, once you're there, you're 95% successful with homemade pasta, in my opinion.
Sardinian pasta is um, the flour and water. There is no egg, so they add some saffron to give it
Yes.
that rich egg color. I'm
Mhm.
curious, do you think they could use turmeric, or would that make it too bitter to give
No,
that color?
actually, you can use many things to naturally color your pasta in addition to saffron. So, saffron's a very expensive ingredient. So, again, I like to teach people ways of doing things that aren't going to cost them a lot of money. You can use turmeric, no problem. You will get a yellow. It won't be as golden as the saffron pasta. I've used something called safflower flour. It's an organic dried powder, and you honestly need maybe a half a teaspoon for a batch of dough for 4 people to get a beautiful yellow color. I've used the Aleppo peppers. You can use
Aleppo?
pepper. Yes, Aleppo, sorry. So there's all different types of things you can use naturally that will get that golden color. You're not limited to saffron. What I love about saffron is that a lot of people will strain the threads out after they steep their water, which oh, it's so hard for me to see because I find those little red strands of saffron in the pasta dough spectacular. So yes, safflower flour is really good, as well as turmeric. And no, it doesn't. There's such a nominal amount that you're not going to taste it in the pasta.
Right. Question for you. If it was your last meal, which pasta would you want to eat?
I would probably eat a box of medium shells with a red sauce and meatballs, because that is the pasta I remember my grandmother Lucy making, my mom making on Sundays. It just says home. That's what I would eat. That's comfort in
Oh,
a bowl for me, for
right.
sure.
If you woke up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would it be?
I would say that if I could wake up and know how to play an instrument, probably a piano. I would love that. I never grew up playing an instrument. I think it works a completely different part of your brain. And I'm mesmerized when I see people playing music. I think it's fantastic.
All right. Next question. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Probably the same advice I give my 19-year-old daughter. Looking back, I would probably say, don't sweat the small things. Everything's going to be okay. I was very motivated child from the age of 10 for some reason. I don't know why. I always knew I wanted to be an attorney. So I felt like my whole academic life, was sort of geared towards working very hard to get to that point. And I probably let a lot of things go, missed out on a lot of things that I shouldn't have or wish I hadn't missed out on. So I would probably say have a better balance. It's all going to be okay.
Okay. Your ultimate culinary fail.
In my opinion, my ultimate culinary fail is probably self-doubt. I have a big imposter syndrome, where I think it affects my ability to just enjoy the process. So I consider that a failure that I'm still always working on because I just don't have the confidence that I wish I did. Spending almost 30 years doing a certain profession, I felt like I really learned how to be a lawyer by doing it. And it's the same with, I think, any profession, especially culinary school. Even though I have a degree in culinary arts, I, wouldn't call myself a chef because I've never chefed. I've never been on a line. I've never worked on a restaurant. So I would say probably self-doubt, and I'm still working on that. That's a daily thing.
Well, I'm sure you're going to get there. And the last question, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
I think we covered almost everything. I guess a lot of people say, are you happy doing what you're doing now? It's so different from the law. And I would say I'm so much happier now. I think your life is a series of chapters in a book, and this is a chapter that I'm currently in right now. Again, meeting and working with Frank Granito has been such a blessing because it's very rare, I think, in life that you can meet someone that shares a passion and you can actually work well together and have so much fun doing it. So I would say that, yeah, I'm very happy with this chapter in my life right now.
Well, let's look back at Julia Child. She didn't start her career in food until she was in her 50s.
Right.
So going for that second career, people, don't hesitate. Let me remind everybody you can reach Laurie Boucher at her Instagram account at Baltimore Home Cook, or you can go on Etsy and look up pasta art. These links are up in the comments. Laurie, I'm waiting for a gifted bag of pasta from you. Anytime soon will be greatly appreciated. I thank you so much for being on the show, and it's been a joy watching your growth and everything that you're doing, your inspiration for women to, go in and take that second career and go for it. I wish you all the best. Thank you for joining us and being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I've had fun. Thank you.
Okay. All right, folks, I'm going to go into who we're having next week's show. Acclaimed chef and author Kim Kushner presents kosher cuisine in a fresh, contemporary light. Her fourth cookbook, just released, Modern Table Kosher Recipes for Everyday Gatherings, jam-packed with 75 recipes. An example, simple and delicious recipes, entertaining ideas, menu inspirations, such as honeydew with sea salt and a lime poppy seed drizzle, or leek and butternut squash soup. Fresh, vibrant salads like grilled peaches, burrata, and mint highlight seasonal offerings, while a selectable slow-cooked lollipop short rib rivals your favorite restaurant dishes. So do tune in next week for Kim Kushner, Chef Kim Kushner, her new cookbook, Modern Table Kosher Recipes for Everyday Gatherings. Never miss a show. The videos of the Food Enthusiast are available on J More Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Need to contact me? You can reach me. My social is at Dara Cooks. My email is food@jmoreliving.com. Let me thank you for always sharing the show with friends and family. It helps it grow, and it's so appreciated. So until next Thursday, may your plates always, always remain full.